evening. First this year sponsored by Rabbi Avishai Hill. Talmud Yomi evening. Shir Asiyim of Masechtas Megillah. Okay, so we have a special treat. Siyum of Limud HaTorah, which was done, I guess, in the new room. So we'll make a Siyum in the new room. That sounds fair, right? So thank you to the participants, not just for sponsoring, but for making our shul a worthwhile place, by having that Limud HaTorah in that room. The subject of the shir today is a little bit, the question is by nature a little bit different than the questions which I spoke about in the past. This is a halacha l'maisa question about the shul that I was asked by the Vad. So if I don't do well, I may get a decrease in salary. I don't know what's going to happen exactly. But the subject revolves around a plan to push out the back wall of the shul, and by doing so extending the Ezes Gevarim and the Ezes Nashim. But the problem in doing that is that we're going to incorporate the women's bathroom into the shul. So we just don't use it. It doesn't help. The room in one's house that has no mezuzah is the bathroom. The bathroom is not only a room that it's not befitting a mezuzah for covered reasons, but on the contrary, it's the opposite, so to speak, of a makam kedusha, and therefore it's not a place to daven. If there's in a room so excrement, a person cannot daven, even if it's not a bathroom. The bathroom in the halachic eye is equal to excrement, and just like one wouldn't be able to daven in such a place where there's excrement there, so too is one not allowed to daven in a bathroom. So just change the name on the door. The story is told of Yaakov Landau, the Rav of Bnei Brak. The last Rav of Bnei Brak was a very tough Rav HaMachshir, and there was a store that he caught them doing some kind of hanky-panky, and he took away the hechsher. That's all, took away the hechsher. In Bnei Brak at that time there was only one hechsher. If you didn't have his hechsher, you had no hechsher. And the fellow came crying to him and he said, Rebbe, I did tshuva. Could my store have a hechsher on it? So he said, sure. But the components of tshuva is you have to have a shinui Hashem. You have to change the name. Can't be your store. That store on 432 West End Avenue can have a hechsher, just not your store on that end, right? So just going to change the name of the room. Instead of calling it a restroom, call it a Beis Medrash. That's not going to do the job. What is necessary to do the job to change a room from one halachic status to another halachic status? That's the question which we're going to discuss. And through the journey of the Marmakoimus of today will lead to a level of understanding that sometimes certain things are good enough, sometimes, but it's not good enough for all the time. Davening in some place temporarily, ba'akrai means sporadically, or having something be deemed a Beis HaKnesses can actually change the halacha. So we're going to examine that idea also in the shir that follows. But in short, I was asked, and I try to keep this in my mind, the purpose of this shir is also to give a little bit of a insight into the back office work, lahavdil, of creating a psak halacha. One of the first questions that a posek has to deal with whenever he's asked a question after he has all the facts exactly right? Are we talking about an Issa D'Oraisa or are we talking about an Issa D'Rabbanan? Because the wiggle room, so to speak, the amount that a person has to support something which is a D'Oraisa sometimes needs more proofs than something which is a D'Rabbanan. We can go sometimes easier in a suffix of a D'Rabbanan, a Vadai D'Rabbanan, and these ideas are actually relevant in today's shir. And we're going to see in this shir that it's actually a machlokes achronim if the subject that we're talking about is a machlokes D'Oraisa or machlokes D'Rabbanan. The Gemara tells us in Megillah, I'm sure we have people over here who know it all by heart, and the Gemara tells us that when Mashiach is going to come, so all of those places of the Goyim are going to turn into Beis Medrashes. Taisus takes issue. How can you have the church become a shul? That's no good. And Taisus answers, well, it just means the boardroom, the place where the people from the church get together to make the decisions about what they're doing, and that's okay. Doesn't say why that's okay exactly. I guess the board isn't so holy. I don't know, but whatever the reason is, and we're going to try to discuss that idea also, an idea from the Chassam Sofer to explain the behind that. So the first piece over here, the Marmakoimis, is the Gemara, the text that speaks about the eventual, the time when Mashiach comes, the changeover from the church, so to speak, to the shul. The Tosfos, who says it can't mean what we just said, because there just can't be. And we have the machlokes, a poskim, if this is a D'Oraisa or this is a D'Rabbanan. And then we get involved in the issue of how do we change? Shinui Hashem, Shinui Maisa. What kind of changes can be made in order to make something from one room to another? Now, theoretically, it's very simple. Just knock the building down and start over from scratch. I told the Vad that maybe that's what we should do, but they were, for some reason, they were not willing to bring in the bulldozer to do that. The reason why is because you're not allowed to destroy your shul before you build a new one. But that wasn't the reason, actually. The bottom line is, and this is an idea, let's do it in stages. We'll take that room, make it into an office for 6 months, and 6 months later, we'll change it into a Beis Medrash. That's also discussed in the Poskim. Can a person do a gradual change? Because you forget what was there, because it had some kind of a new usage. Is that good enough? This which we have, Kedusha in the shul, is not just for proper conduct in the shul. A shul has Kedusha, and that demands a certain halachic rulings. That means one is not allowed to do business, one is not allowed to eat, one is not allowed to do all kinds of things in a shul. This happens to be a Beis Medrash that has unique dinim to it, which we touched on it at other times. Maybe we'll discuss it a little bit tonight. But the halachas of doing things, because there's a real Kedusha here. So if there's a real Kedusha here, the fact that you did something else there doesn't really help. Not only that, you can't change a shul into a bedroom. In Chutz La'aretz, this is done because they make the shuls what's called al tanai, with some kind of a condition that when it's in use, it's called a shul. When it's not in use, it's not called a shul. Whether one can do that in Eretz Yisrael or not, that's a whole discussion. But a Beis Medrash is different, a shtibel is different. Each one of these places have a different halachic status, and the relevance will be very strong in our situation. What is necessary to do to change it from a bathroom to a shul, to allow that to be done. And that's, I'm just going to give an example. The question, Shulchan Aruch, at the bottom of the first page. Candles which were used in the services. The chibon shamsham. And the person who runs the church put them out. Also, they cannot be used. I'd just like to mention this because, though this is not the relevance of today's shir, but I think it's important to mention this. The Tshuvas Hara'im Rabbi Eliyahu Mizrahi, which is a focal person in this subject, he discusses the church. He discusses the candles that are burnt under the cross. Whether this is just called a place where people come together to pray to their God, or is this actually Avodah Zarah? And his position, Tshuva Pei Aleph, his position is that it's a real Avodah Zarah. And that candle being burnt is a service. And therefore, a church, and in halacha the church and the excrement have the same halachic standings, cannot be made into a shul without it undergoing a major overhaul. Discussion, and just end off with one other piece of discussion which is very important. It's not so simple. In the Shilas David, which bring down a small piece of it, but it's not so simple that a person can take something which was used for a regular item, for a person to take a aron bigadim and make it into Aron HaKodesh. Even though there's nothing wrong with aron bigadim, that's not called a ma'us, a disgusting or a bizayin kind of a use. But the simple reading of Shulchan Aruch seems to say that all things that were used for the regular person cannot be used for a Dvar Mitzvah. So, if you have that in mind, forget about a bathroom. Who says you can turn a bedroom into a shul? So the Shelas Dov, when he discusses this question, he actually starts off with that question. Because you have to understand that taking a bathroom and turning it into a shul is a very serious question. The bottom line, people just shouldn't hold you. Halacha l'maisa, it's permissible with the conditions that Mitzvah Hashem, if it happens, Mashiach doesn't come first, then we build a whole new building. But if we're forced into the situation to do this, halacha l'maisa, it'll be permissible. But there will have to be certain conditions that will have to be fulfilled in order to allow it to happen. And I'll just mention that even those paiskim, the Aruch didn't bring down all the paiskim discuss it, even the paiskim who are mekel and allow it to be done, they say better not. And that's like a very funny thing. Either it's mutter or it's aser. Mitzvah Hashem, by the time we're finished tonight, we'll even have an understanding how the better not actually has a place in halacha in this case in particular. There's a halachic reason why there's a better not than just we're undecided. Okay, that's law. People are taken in for a ride because they believe the guy who's speaking. I discussed our bathrooms over here, and I'm sure you already learned places that discusses bathrooms. So So you understand that we have a problem. I'm not so sure that our bathrooms are bathrooms. Why is that so? The Gemara tells us that there's such an idea as a Beis Hakisei Parsoi. I don't know how many people over here have ever been on a train in America. That the trains in America, they have toilets that there's no receptacle to the toilet. Whatever it leaves that chamber is left on the tracks someplace in Kentucky. I don't know where it goes exactly. But the Chazon Ish...
Today?
I wasn't there.
I mean...
In my lifetime. I don't know what today means, but when I was on trains in America, that's what was going on. Is it? Yeah,
it's against the law now, but when I went on the trains also.
Okay, so Pooper Super is also against the law. Anyways, but the bottom line is the Chazon Ish discusses whether that toilet has a din of a toilet or not, even though it doesn't receive anything, any refuse at all. The Gemara tells us that Beis Hakisei Parsoi, which was elaborate plumbing from the olden times, a person would sit on some kind of a toilet and the excrement would roll into a different district, does not have the din of a toilet at all, and therefore it's permissible to daven there, learn there, because the fact that the excrement just leaves the room, it's a nothing. There's nothing going on at all. Nowadays, our bathrooms aren't exactly like that. Why are they not exactly like that? Because you have to flush. So there's an amount of time that it actually sits there. In the times of Chazal, where they used a potty, they didn't keep the potty there forever. They also dumped it out there. Someplace they dumped it out. So the fact that it was used only for a short time is the subject the Chazon Ish battles with, and how do we decide whether it's a Beis Hakisei Parsoi or not? So, if our bathrooms are not bathrooms, they're Beis Hakisei Parsois, so then I could go home. And originally, when I was thinking about this question, I asked my shutef in the kollel, I said, do you think it makes a difference? Does it make a difference or doesn't make a difference? The subject matter which we're learning about is that it's not refined, not respectable to have a bathroom turned into a shul. So I said, well, Rabbi, it's not really a bathroom. Does that make it more respectable? Could very well be that the Beis Hakisei Parsoi, even if we were going to accept the opinion of the Poskim, that it has a din of a Beis Hakisei Parsoi, was unclear to me if it's going to help. The bottom line, this is a permanent non-Beis Hakisei, Beis Hakisei. So does that help? And I was mulling over this issue for a long time. Which way does it go? It's Hashem, yeah.
The definition of the Beis Hakisei is the toilet itself.
No.
So,
no.
I'm saying if you have a room and there's a toilet, you know it's a bathroom. If you take out the toilet, it's just a room. It's a closet. It's something.
So the answer to that question is that that's not true. That's not true. And the Chazon Ish discusses. No, it's a very good question. The Chazon Ish discusses. He says the air, this space, the whole room becomes a one big toilet. And he discusses actually nowadays. In the olden times, the refuse would actually touch the walls. Doesn't make a difference nowadays or not. But the general understanding is the room itself, not only the toilet, is a bathroom. And that's why we would have this problem. But this is the start of the issue. Not only that, the Chazon Ish discusses the fact that the piping that would leave the Beis Hakisei Parsoi would obviously get soiled, just like we have a toilet brush in the bathroom. Definitely in those days, I don't know if they had one or not, but definitely they could have used one, right? Does it make a difference? And he discusses how far away it has to go. But the bottom line is he discusses, is there a problem of the way that one has to expose himself, sit when he's in the bathroom? Maybe that alone is enough of a reason that that shouldn't be used as a place of learning, etc. No, it's forget about the excrement that's there, the whole a person exposing himself, that should also possibly be a problem, and he goes on to refute that possibility. But we're starting off with question number 1. Does it make a difference if it's a bathroom or it's not a bathroom? Question number 2, why does a Taisus who is having a problem, it can't be that it's a bathroom, it can't be that it's a bathroom, that just can't be. Why can't it be? We don't know. But he says, Elavada l'shmam botim shemisafsim sham levad shel avoid avodas kachavim. A place where they get together, it's at the board. What's the significance of that? Is it any different than their living room? If it is, what's the difference between that and the church itself? If it's just a big room, you know, if anybody's been upstate New York, in the town hall, there's a big room. What do they get together in the town hall to do? I really don't know. But sometimes this, sometimes that. So it's just a regular room. Obviously, we're talking about the place where they got together for their religious things. So why would that be okay? Is it just a lesser, it's not the Avodah Zarah itself. What is Taisus driving at? That he's just compromising. He's staying at the same thing as before, just to a lesser degree, and it's not a base Avodah Zarah at all. What is he referring to? Again, I mentioned that the idea whether it's a D'oraisa or D'Rabbanan is very important. Why is it important? First, if we have a question if our bathrooms are Beis Akisei Parsoy or not, if it's a suffix in a D'oraisa, maybe goes one way, some of the D'Rabbanan maybe goes the other way, that's first of all. But, as some of the boys can mention, when the bathroom is not in use, even if nothing has been changed, but it became obsolete, there's no more water there, there's no more people there, whatever it is, this that it has its stigma to it, according to many poskim, that would make it already D'Rabbanan. So our bathroom over here, if we rip it out, obviously one can't use it. Maybe it makes it into D'Rabbanan, and then that would be easier for us to renovate it and make it into a shul. Because if there's no toilet there, it's just not going to happen. The question which I had in delving into this matter is a very, very simple question, and I think that the answer is almost as simple as the question. It just took me a long time to get there. The classical psak that everybody discusses is the Panim Me'iros, and the Panim Me'iros basically says that if you take out the toilet, it has a Shinui Hashem, it has a Shinui Hashem, so then it works. Is this a technical question, or is this not a technical question? Again, because you changed it from this name to that name, in Tumah and Tyra we understand that there's a technical thing that happens. If it has this kind of name, then it's one thing, that name it has something else. But in the halachas that we're talking about, either it is or it isn't. And I would like to explain. According to some poskim, they say that if you would put sid, if you would plaster, put a level of plaster on the walls, that's good enough. But just to take the toilet out, that's not good enough. But it's the same room, Painting the same pictures. What's the difference? Why is it that the discussion is with a Shinui Maisa or a Shinui Hashem, it should be enough? What is the discussion? Why is that the litmus test to the halacha that we're discussing over here?
I think in your language you'd say you're given a new tool, that's a hood.
That's what I would probably say. But my question over here is that good enough?
But in halacha we see it is. It's got a certain
So I would just like to ask you a question. I agree with you. What would you say, Mr. Katz? How would you feel to walk into your shul that has a very steep point on the top of it? You don't know what I'm talking about?
There's such a shul in Borough Park.
I understand. But you understand, you know, it's over here, the Dover Mos is all of the seemingly is all of the remembering, all the understanding of where you are. Would you think it's a wonderful place if somebody would go to Auschwitz and they would make a Shini Hashem there and make it into a party hall? You got to do to that Zehut? No, yes, you are right. And I appreciate what you're saying, that you got to do to that Zehut, it helps. So is that the issue? That's my question. Is that the issue? So yes, the answer to the question is, obviously it is. Because that's what these poskim are saying. That's the subject. How much has to be changed? And the point, which I'd like to just underline, the question of how much we have to be changed, is it just redoing the architecture? Or is it a question of how much of a halachic change has to happen? Now, I'm going to take what Parrot said to the next stage. The Chassam Sofer, who he discusses this issue, discusses the Maros HaTzoivos. The Maros HaTzoivos were the mirrors that the women used in order to arouse their husbands in Mitzrayim. They dedicated them to make the kiyar. Moshe Rabbeinu felt it was improper, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, no, but dafka, those are the things that I want. This is not a chumash here. And the question over here was, what's the problem? They're melted down anyways. They got a new Tudat Zehut. Yet Moshe Rabbeinu felt it was improper. Now, the truth of the matter is, when I saw the Chassam Sofer, I had a question, which I'm sure everybody had this question. Who says Moshe Rabbeinu held that it's not mutter? There are many things that are mutter. We just say, I'll just say it in English, zelo matim. Right? How's that for English? Right? It's not befitting for what we're doing. Mutter and usher and proper and improper are not the same thing twice. Okay, they're not synonymous. They're two different things. How did the Chassam Sofer know that the subject is mutter and usher? Maybe it was a question of proper and improper. And if it's a question of proper or improper, there I would be able to understand easier what that the Chassam Sofer says. The Chassam Sofer says the other kelim that they're talking about, since they were all mixed together, once they're mixed together, so I don't have any remembrance, I have no touchstone to connect me with the past of these items. Whereas, if it's a question of halachically, then you have to know, maybe bittul shouldn't work for Davar Shem Kedusha. Again, the question is really, what is the subject that we are discussing over here? The place which there was a shul has to be left vacant. Why? It's a question of Kedusha. The Megillah crew, they can tell us, right? Be shatech there things. Is it because of Kedusha that's there or not, or just because of Agmas Nefesh? Right? There's a whole subject about what is there, what something is. These are halachic issues. And sometimes it's Mishum Agmas Nefesh, that it's not a halachic issue, it's an emotional issue, that we have to have a certain kind of attachment. So here, this is, I think, the pivotal issue which has to be answered. The kedusha that is on a shul, how important is that? I'm not right now discussing from a halachic point of view. The El Yerabba says as follows. The halacha is that you are allowed to daven in the bathroom or the church that was made over into a regular room, but you can't make it into a shul. This seems to be very difficult to understand. If there's a problem, you're not allowed to daven in a place where there's tzaya there, whether it's a shul or whether it's a regular house. What's the difference whether it's a shul or it's just the room? In other words, and I'll just use this as an example, and I may surprise many of you, this is Negeh Halacha L'Maisa. Many times a person works in an office, and in the office they have a place where they daven mincha, and they meet there for mincha every day. And many offices are renovated all the time, and they want to use that room for davening. So according to the El Yerabba, you would have to decide, is that a shul, or is it just a room that you're davening once in a while? What's its status? Now this is like a real question. It has halacha l'maisa, and I'm sure that people here who have had this exact scenario happen to them. What is that room? And why should it make a difference? The Chassam Sofer, in the new editions of the Chassam Sofer on Megillah, he goes my way. And he says, what is the answer to the question? Now, the Shulchan Aruch says, the Mogen Avraham actually says that a person is allowed to use a church or whatever, a bathroom, so to speak, a church for a shul. And the Achrayim, the Dogel Mevov and the Chassam Sofer, they ask a question from this Taisus. Taisus says that you can't. What do you do with this Taisus? The Chassam Sofer answers very simply. We're not talking about halacha. We're talking about la'ased lavoi. La'ased lavoi, which is what that nevuah is about, HaKadosh Baruch Hu would do it in the best of ways. Even if it's tainted in the smallest amount, he wouldn't allow it to be done. But mutter, aser, that's not the subject, b'chlal Gemara. The Mogen Avraham is talking about mutter, aser. So when the Vad asks me, is it mutter, aser? I have no choice but to say halacha mutter. So they say, but really, what's right? Aser lovely. Mitzvah Shem, we should get to the real building, right? But in other words, in the Olam which you're in right now, it could be that it's mutter, but yes, it's lacking. This is what I mentioned beforehand, that somebody says yes or no, better not, means that there's a really halachic place, and this is Chassam Sofer in his Tshuva, he comes out that there's some places that say that melting down is enough, some places say it's not. Therefore he says, HaMachmer Tov Lo Bracha. Why? Because there's an aspect of, aside from technically, got a new Tudat Zehut, there's still an aspect of some kind of a reframing that's necessary and that's lacking. This is an akuda that I think revolves around this whole sugya. In short, the subject of mutter and aser can be that it depends on what its shem is, what its technical terminology is, and on that there's different opinions amongst the poskim. How much renovations must be done? Is it enough to just take out the toilet, and being that it cannot be used anymore for a bathroom, it creates a shinui shem? Or would you have to have some kind of re-plastering the walls that we could say that it's a different room than it is? and some places even more. You have to change the tiles. There are those that say you even have to take out through 3 tvachim underneath it. It has to be whatever is called the bubble of the building, gutted, removed, and then you can have something else in that place. And that's in short, that's what's going on. But none of the poskim, which I saw, are really ever happy. Why? Because there's an aspect that's still there. In a situation, however, I would like to say, in a situation, like in this situation, where really everything is going to be gutted and there's not going to be any kind of a remnant that would give you the smallest of an indication of what it was, according to most poskim, that's almost lechatchila. That's almost lechatchila. Why? Because here we don't have any way to connect ourselves with the past. We don't need a Shini Shem or Shinoi Ma'aser. It's just not the same thing. Those ideas that say it's a Nutadat Zehut, that's when you have to get to court. I don't want to get there. When you'll have such a major overhaul happen, most of the poskim say, again, that's almost lechatchila. It's not exactly 1,000% lechatchila, and that's why it's permissible to be done. But the idea, I think, which is of great amount of prominence in this sugya, is yes, something that was used in a negative way, it is not proper, and according to some poskim, it's an issur d'oraisa to use it for a mitzvah. It's not right. It's not right. According to some poskim, and this I'd like to end off with, the shtibel, which many of you people think that a shtibel just means a place where people have minyanim, ad hoc minyanim. The shtibel has special halachic status to it. The Rechaim in Chelik Beis, in Melamed Beis, discusses the shtibel. And in the shtibel, people used to do all kinds of things that you're not allowed to do in a shul or in a Beis Medrash. And the Rechaim explains the reason why it's permissible to be done. It's because a shtibel is not a Beis Medrash or a Beis Knesses. That's why it's called a shtibel. Don't make any mistakes to think that it's anything other than, which I discussed once on Shabbos morning about 7 or 8 years ago. I'm sure you all remember. The Shlach Kodesh says everybody has to have in their house a special room where they daven. You don't daven wherever you want. Person has to have a place where you daven. And that room has a certain level of kedusha. But it's not a Beis HaKnesses. And therefore there are those who say, it's the most dramatic out of all this, that the whole problem of taking a bathroom and making it into a shul, that's only if the shul is going to have kedusha. But if the room that you're making it into is not going to be called the Beis HaKnesses, so then there's no problem. It's not the davening, it's being mechal kedusha, to appropriate kedusha to a place that had a shame of a Beis HaKisei or a Beis Avodah Zarah. That's what is forbidden. Now we can understand that which the Eliyah Rabbah said. What did the Eliyah Rabbah say? He said you're allowed to daven in the place. It's cleaned out. It's fine. It's good. It's a different place. But to make a shul, what's making a shul? Making a shul is you're making kedusha in that place. It's not proper to make kedusha in that place if at one time had a shame of a Beis HaKisei. When I came across this idea, I was ecstatic. Why was I ecstatic? Because when I started off my odyssey on the subject, I had a question: does it make a difference if a Beis HaKisei parsoi or not? And I have an answer. If there are those who are going to say that it makes a difference if it has a Shem Beis HaKnesses or not, so then that means you can't have a place that was called a Beis HaKisei be called a Beis HaKnesses. So if it wasn't called a Beis HaKisei, then there's no problem if it's called a Beis HaKnesses. So we already have a Gilui, according to the Eliyah Rabbah, and those that go with that approach, that in a case like nowadays when the plumbing's working, place like nowadays where the bathrooms possibly have a din of a Beis HaKisei parsoi, so then there's more room to say that it should be permissible even according to those who say that you cannot use it for a shul, even if we had a shul, but if it's not really a Beis HaKisei, then it's not a problem to use it as a shul.